My son was accused of engaging in criminal sexual conduct when he was 10 years old with an 11-year-old girl. He has since told me he was innocent, but he found himself on the Michigan Sex Offender Registry having to report quarterly, or we would be in big trouble. He'd get locked up again if he did not report. And when he turned 18, he was going to land on the Public Sex Offender Registry. So anything he did as a child would look like he was an adult committing these acts. I realize that this is very hard to believe, but the Northern Express did an article on my son's situation called Branded for Life, and she detailed the facts, and this kind of stuff does happen. They're taking kids away, they're locking them up, they're putting them on sex offender registries. It can happen to you. My name is Wendy Beal, and I live in Antrim County, Michigan. In 2004, my then 11-year-old son was sexually tortured in a private psychiatric hospital called Havenwick, which is located in Auburn Hills, Michigan. Child Protective Services sabotaged 3 years of therapy for my son, who was sexually abused at his dad's house when he was 3. Because of this, I was unable to find any other services for my son. The CPS responded to calls regarding my son acting out sexually towards other children, but failed to notify me of the allegations. As a result, my 10-year-old son stayed the night at his 11-year-old female cousin's house. He was accused of going into her room and touching her private area through her underwear and threatening to kill her if she told anyone. My 11-year-old son was incarcerated with male sex offenders as old as 19 and exposed to many kinds of sexual perversion, such as covert taping and penile plethysmographs. He was forced to write stories called scripts that were about sexual deviance. He was made to read these stories aloud into a tape recorder and inhale 3 ammonia capsules under his nose until he choked. Havenwick also engages in a practice called penile plethysmographs. The boys were forced to put a ring with sensors on their penis and are then exposed to sexually explicit material. While he was incarcerated, he was also drugged against his will with psychotropic drugs he neither wanted nor needed. Our attorney discovered during her investigation that it is a misdemeanor in Michigan to provide minors with any type of pornography, yet Havenwick does exactly that and is rewarded with our hard-earned tax dollars to do so. The facility wanted my son to participate in this as well, but he was released from this obligation because of his young age. After 17 months, my son was released after successfully completing the program. Before my son was transported from Muskegon River Youth Home to Havenwick, he received a rare visit from Antrim County juvenile justice worker Nicole Little. She told him that this was costing the county a lot of money, so he better hurry up and finish treatment quickly or he would be sent to a youth prison. She then felt the need to share that she was formerly employed by Wackenhut and one of their youth facilities, and how a group of boys dragged another boy into a room and sodomized him until his rectum fell out and he bled to death. To add insult to injury, my son found himself on the state sex offender registry. Never mind that he was only 10 at the time. My son has a near-genius IQ, and I was determined to salvage his future. I found attorney Joni Fixel through the National Whistleblower Association, and thankfully we were able to get my son removed from the sex offender registry. Because of the treatment at Havenwick is so invasive, Community Mental Health was required to notify the Human Rights Committee and the Behavior Management Committee of my son's confinement and treatment. I requested an investigation into my son's case after he came home, and the Department of Community Health in Lansing sent someone to investigate. They discovered that none of the required paperwork was in place and that the only requirement was their monthly contractual payment. In other words, they funneled money through their agency and used my child to do so. Antrim County billed me weekly, and they kept some screwy books, crediting me with payments that I did not make. I started an expose on our local message boards on Chain of Lakes Internet. First, they violated my right to free speech and removed my thread from their forum because they said it was offensive. It was automatically archived, and I started a new link on freedom of speech and posted the link. Nobody noticed for a couple of months, and then they took down their message boards completely because I spoke of sloppy bookkeeping in Bel Air, Michigan. I filed a federal lawsuit where we were scheduled to go to trial on April 2012. We decided to drop Antrim County from the suit as defendants because the immunity afforded to state workers would have muddled things up. North Country Community Mental Health settled out of court, and Havenwick offered us a lousy $50,000, which we declined. More than money, we wanted our dignity back. We chose to risk that in favor of an opportunity to have our day in court in front of a jury of our peers. Shockingly, the judge, who had been supportive of the case, coining it the Clockwork Orange case, found a case law to justify throwing our case out at the 11th hour, weeks from jury trial. We had waited more than 2 years and finally saw some light at the end of the tunnel. This shows the corruption and nepotism in our courts and the slavery in which we live. Judge Robert Yonker, U.S. District Court in Grand Rapids, dismissed our claim, stating that we gave informed consent for the treatment, even though the treatment violates Michigan law, and Community Mental Health in Lansing said my child's rights were violated. I was court-ordered in Antrim County Probate Court by Judge Norm Hayes to sign all necessary releases the day they locked my 11-year-old son in a youth prison. My son claimed during deposition that the signature for consent to do covert taping was not in his handwriting. Also, covert taping was never explained to us until it was way too late. Our attorney told me I had 90 days to appeal the judge's decision, but it would cost me another $7,500 retainer, and then we had a less than 6% chance of ever being heard and a less than 1% chance of winning after that. So our justice system is just a joke and a waste of time. Once again, we're victimized by the legal system. In spite of everything, my son is now attending Michigan Tech and is studying electrical engineering and nanotechnology. Recently, he confided in me that he was innocent of the crime that locked him up in the first place, so this was all for nothing. My son was sexually tortured when he was 11 years old in Havenwood Psychiatric Hospital, located in Auburn Hills, Michigan. They made him do covert taping, and that required sniffing ammonia capsules, and he had nosebleeds for months after he came home from these ammonia capsules. They put him on Ritalin, which he did not want or need. He said it made him sick and slow. There was another boy in the facility that said a staff member engaged in oral and anal sex with him in the facility where they did the plethysmographs, and he reported it to the group, but the man was still working there when my son came on the unit. So he heard all about that. He didn't know anything about sex until he got there, and he came out knowing stuff that he shouldn't ever have to have been exposed to. They ruined his childhood.
And what did the courts do about it?
I contacted some people, the Community Mental Health Commissioner in Antrim County, and she ignored me. Everybody either ignores me when I try to tell them what's happening or pretend they don't understand what it is I'm trying to report. So meanwhile, even though it's against the law to give show pornography to minors in Michigan, we're paying Havenwood Hospital to do exactly that.
Now, how did your son get into Havenwood Hospital in the first place?
He was coerced without an attorney into pleading guilty in probate court because they said they were going to get him some help, and we had no idea what he was in for until it was way too late. He pled guilty to second-degree CSC. They locked him up immediately for 4 months in a juvenile detention home, and then 17 more months in Havenwood Hospital. And he successfully completed the program and came home and found himself on the sex offender registry.
Right. And was he guilty of what he pled to?
My son told me once the judge threw the case out that he really didn't do what he was accused of, but he didn't want to muddle the case up at that point because he felt like he would still be compensated for the torture in that facility. And I also have submitted 5 reports of state violations in Havenwood where they gave a girl that cut herself all the time a razor and she slashed her arms up and needed stitches. A staff member broke a girl's arm. They didn't do background checks on employees. Can't remember what the other ones. I believe they broke a girl's nose, taking her down. It seems to me there was one more. Can't remember right now, but.
And then he was, what was he? The CSC is what, child sexual conduct?
Yeah, my son was charged with second-degree criminal sexual conduct, and then when he was put on the sex offender registry when he turned 18, they were going to have. It was going to say second-degree CSC with a minor under the age of 13, and it didn't state that he was 10 and she was 11, so it would look like he was an adult perpetrator. And we were fortunate enough to get him off the sex offender registry with about 2 weeks to spare before it would have been too late.
Right. And he says that he didn't do that.
He says he didn't do it, and I believe him. U.S. District Court Judge Robert Yonker consistently was ruling in our favor until 2 weeks before the trial, and then he threw our case out saying we gave informed consent. I was court-ordered by Judge Norman Hayes to sign all the paperwork for my son's treatment, and my son's signature is questionable, as he says it does not look like his handwriting.
So it's a federal judge.
Yes, it was in federal.
Federal judge. So the federal judge denied you any relief independently deciding that it was consensual? This treatment at the
Havenwick.
Havenwick. That's what happened?
Yes. The judge decided that we gave informed consent at the 11th hour and threw the case out, but I find that rather suspicious because if that were to be believed, he should have thrown it out at the beginning and not let us wait 2 years for a court date. We were almost there.
Yeah, I mean, the documents existed in the file way back then, and even though there's documents, your son saying it's not his signature?
Yes, my son says it is not his signature.
Was he allowed to sign anything at the age of 11?
They did have him sign some documentation, and I had to sign also. But I was court-ordered to sign, so I felt like if I didn't cooperate, then I would never see my son again. They locked a jail door about, a foot thick, a steel door slam between me and my kid every time I saw him. So I felt like it was better just to go along with the program and try to do what we could do, and we got him out of there. And I've been yelling from the rooftops ever since. But like I said, either people just ignore me or pretend they don't understand what I'm trying to explain or push me off to another agency, waste my time. Oh, they're putting kids 5, 6, 7 years old on the sex offender registries. It's insane.
Have you made contact with very many other people that have had this type of issue, which, by the way, is a first for me on the trip. You're the first really weird sexual abuse charges against the 10-year-old story I've had.
There's a lady that has a website called Operation Awareness, and I sent her an email, and she posted it as an article that detailed the hardship and embarrassment that being on that sex offender registry has caused me and my son.
Anything else you'd like to say?
The school, when he came home from treatment, they held this big emergency meeting regarding my son. He was not allowed to attend gym class. He couldn't use the public restrooms. I had to walk to and from school and escort him. They hired somebody to follow him around and shadow him. It was horrible.
Couldn't take gym class or use the restroom?
Nope.
What did he have to do?
Use the teacher's lounge restroom. So rather than be embarrassed and asked why he was using that bathroom, he'd hold it all day, and we lived right across the street from the school, and he'd just have to run home at the end of the day. It was horrible. It's cruel.
What's the name of the school?
Central Lake Public Schools. I'm hoping that perhaps that program at Havenwick Hospital could be looked at, since it's illegal to provide pornography to these kids, let alone they are torturing them in that facility. I can't express enough. These kids need help. I had to wait until a lawsuit was over with to try to do something about this, and I'm not done, even though my son's not on the registry anymore and he's in college. I can't move on knowing these kids are still in there being tortured like that. It's horrible. I had to wait until a lawsuit was over with to try to do something about this, and I'm not done, even though my son's not on the registry anymore and he's in college. I can't move on knowing these kids are still in there being tortured like that. It's horrible. Nobody will help them. Sorry.
I know it's impossible to get a mailing list of people. Have you tried any other techniques to try to identify some of the other parents?
No, not from that facility, other than on the internet, just putting it out there and contact information, but nobody's got a hold of me yet. But I recently emailed the information to State Representative Greg McMaster, and I don't know if they're going to do anything about it or not. They tried referring me off to another agency too. Seems like it's easier to do that than to look at things.